Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. And it's been a little while, but I've been busy with school stuff and teaching this semester, getting it underway and everything. But I didn't want to let the channel go like I did last semester, and I do have some big plans, especially for October, which I'll let you know about later. But I had promised a couple of videos. Usually I like to do scripted videos on this channel where I'm talking about a certain topic, this or that, or the mythological implications of characters, or a review or something like that. But I had mentioned and teased out a couple of videos, one about the problem I think that Warner Brothers /DC has with Batman. And then there was a movie tag that I was pretty excited to do. I was tagged in. Problem was that I became busy and kind of not lost interest in it. I mean, I still think it's a problem. I still think it's something that should be fixed, but just lost that drive to do the Batman video until recently. Something else happened to trigger it back. So I'm going to get into all that, but I just wanted to briefly mention why I'd been gone for so long. Also, the fact that this isn't a scripted video, obviously. I wanted to hurry up and get this out since it's been a while. And so I'll try to keep the ranting to a minimum, but, we'll see what happens anyway. It was a few weeks ago that I walked into a Dollar Tree store. I don't know if you have those where you live, but they're some of those stores where everything costs $1 just flat. And they have this line of sticker books. They're made by Panini, and I've got some pictures here. And they've had them for different characters, for different movies, and you'd have to buy the book, and then you have to buy these little packs of stickers, and you go through the book and try to buy all the stickers that match up with all of the pictures to complete, the whole book. So a little bit of a price grab there. But they had one, it's called The World of Batman, I saw. And I thought, and I saw the pictures, and I thought, what is this? And I pick it up, and it's finally official marketing of this silly idea that I've heard some of the fans of modern Batman takes, like the Snyderverse or, some of those kind of things, have been saying. They've been pitching this idea that it's all the same character. These are just different versions. They're just different versions. It's all still Batman. So stop griping or complaining that you don't like this one or that one. This is an absurd argument for a number of reasons. And you hear it not just about Batman, about Superman especially, and anybody, or Captain America, or anyone that, fans and readers or moviegoers are having issues with about current treatments of the characters. It is true that different versions of characters exist, but these, for example, in this book conflates Adam West's Batman, the Batman from those new movies about, robot animals or something like that. I haven't called those. It conflates those with Christian Bale, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, the trilogy, and of course Batfleck and Batman v Superman. The big surface problem is that this is supposed to be for children, and children have no business watching, especially the Batfleck movie. They have any, who would show their child, hey, this is Batman, he's a hero. Yeah, he's killing and torturing people throughout this movie and kind of wants to kill Superman. But it's okay, he's a hero. Oh, no, that's absurd. And even the Chris Nolan films, they're, the subject matter is, I would never let a child watch Dark Knight or anything like that. So that's just a problem right there. The other problem is that these are simply not the same character. The Adam West Batman is not the same character as Batfleck, and the Batfleck is not the same character as the Christian Bale, and so forth. There's room for variation. There's room for vast variation even. But there needs to be that core in place for it to still be the same character. So what is the core I'm talking about? How am I defining this? Well, it's no secret that this channel is built around a cultural study of superheroes, and I look at them as how they operate. It's mythology in our culture, through psychology, through literary studies, through all of that. So what is the core archetype of Batman? Well, he's a gothic detective. That's who he is at the absolute core. Now, people have tried to develop him so far away from that, but that's the core of Batman. When he was first created in his first few books, there was very little to differentiate him from the Black Bat or the Shadow of the pulp mags. I mean, those are the kind of characters that he was born out of specifically. Now, Bill Finger, of course, gave him a wonderful backstory and he developed from there. So characters, just about every superhero, never just stayed the way they were when they were very first created, because that's not how mythology works. Stories that become a culture's mythology, that mean something to the culture and stay with them and become ingrained in their cultures, they have to have a little bit of a period where they're subject to the feedback from the audience. So you see that happen with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman even, where the stories were a little bit different at the very beginning, but there was a little period of settling in, and pretty soon it settled in. Superman, for example, all of the DNA for what these characters will become were still there, but they had to become what the culture truly, they had to be shaped and molded at the very end by the culture. So Superman, for example, was created as the great adolescent nerd fantasy. I mean, here's the character who's picked on, who's overlooked, who's not popular with the women or anything like that. But if he just goes into that closet and changes clothes, all of a sudden, he's got this wonderful secret that if only people knew, then the women would swoon and all the men would be impressed and stuff like that. I mean, that's basic adolescent fantasy, that awkward time or whatever. So it created as that, and there's still little elements of that survive. But what he settled into was a country's patriotic fantasy that it needed. It needed an ideal. Especially in all the turbulent times, World War II and everything that came after, it needed an ideal, an American way that it could strive for. Not necessarily what it was already, but an American way that it could strive for, and that's what Superman became. Superman became someone, the man of tomorrow, and who would teach us and show us a better way, that kind of thing. So, Batman developed on his own. He started out in the first few comics, he's carrying a gun. He's doing all these kinds of things. He's a much darker character. But he eventually developed, and the wonderful part of his backstory became that he would never touch a gun because the gun had robbed his parents. And for the same reason, he'll never kill, because that is so ingrained in his drive. It's what makes him who he is, that he does not want more death. That was the problem with the murder of his parents. It wasn't that the wrong people were killed. Of course, he didn't want his parents killed, but he wants to stop all of that from happening. You can't go monkeying with those core things right there. So core drives, the core archetype, he's the gothic detective. At different times, and especially in different cultural climates, different types of stories have been more popular than one or the other. So Batman, in the Christopher Nolan films, for example. Now those are, for the most part, the last one had some issues, but just from a strict storytelling, strict film studies aspect, those are quality films, artistic films, but they're not the core of Batman. At all. Batman's not even a detective in those films, really. He's a ninja. He's a typical Christopher Nolan character, which is great because Christopher Nolan makes these great movies and he does these great explorations of characters second guessing who they are and trying to figure out their identities and stuff like that. That kind of story can work for Batman in an origin story. Batman Begins, for example, was clearly appropriate for that. And The Dark Knight was even appropriate for that because it felt still like a beginning Batman kind of story. This is the first time he's meeting the Joker. But of course we know that, that was supposed to be the height of his career. And then Dark Knight Rises and he quit being Batman for a while and then comes back and all this stuff. Then it got a little weird. So, strayed from the archetype a bit. Of course, Batfleck is miles away from the archetype. He's killing people. He's using a gun. He's doing anything and everything. And people would say to defend it, well, no, this is just a time that he went through. This is how he's going to become the Batman we know and love. You hear that with Superman a lot. Those movies were how he becomes this. No, you can't become that. That's a completely different type of archetype altogether. In Superman's case, the aspirational character who just is that good, is that, wholesome and pure. If they have to go through something to become that wholesome and pure, well, then they're not the aspirational, then they're the cathartic motivational. They're different archetypes altogether. You don't become these things. And, Batman, he could become a detective, but that's going to happen at the end of his life. That just, it makes no sense. So there are too many variations. This is a problem that Warner Brothers has with the character. Warner Brothers knows that Batman spells money. He's an extremely popular character. And many people who don't read comic books might have first came to the character through the Nolan films, or now they're coming to him maybe through the Batfleck films. And maybe they find something they like about the character. Maybe they find a real connection and they might initially be defensive that anybody would say something bad about that. Well, that's okay to connect with the character, but it's quite a separate thing altogether, and it makes no difference how you feel about the character, that portrayal at all, as to whether or not it's true to the core archetype of the character. So what's the problem, some might say? Well, people like this character, they like him like this now, and so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that everything that was built on and everything that's riding on and the legacy of the core archetype doesn't transfer over. And you don't need to understand all of this kind of stuff for that to happen. It just simply doesn't transfer over. The students in my class, I bring up Batman in one of my classes on constructing American heroes and American heroic archetypes, and we get to the detective, and we start out with Edgar Allan Poe, who of course began the detective story, founded it, and then we move on to the hard-boiled detective, that uniquely American invention with Sam Spade, Marlowe, and stuff like that. And then we go from there to Batman. And before they read anything, before we assign anything, the students are thinking, Batman, where's the connection here? And I let them read Long Halloween and some stories like that, and it clicks. And I say, he's actually called the world's greatest detective in the comics. This is all a part of his core archetype. So the problem here, it's bigger than just the films. It's bigger than just the marketing to children like that. Even in the comic books in general, there can be room for variation. That's why we have different Batman titles. So you have a Batman title and a Detective Comics title. Both are, dealing with Batman. And right now in Rebirth, they've done a cool thing, which is to let the Detective Comics run be all about the Batman family. So it's Batman with Batwoman, Robin, and Nightwing and all of the group and everything there. Specifically, Clayface bringing him on board and stuff like that. And it's been great. It's been really wonderful, been really, bringing a heart to Batman and great stuff. The Batman run itself has been more just focusing on him, a lone character. It's been a little weird. I did another video about that. Some of the oddities in that story, but, it's a different sort of side to the character, not compromising the archetype at all. You can even have something like All-Star Batman right now, which is Scott Snyder. And this is what, Scott Snyder is writing the heavy metal, or the metal rather, event of DC Comics right now. And this is what kind of brought me back to this idea of wanting to talk about this, because Scott Snyder writes the All-Star Batman series, and Scott Snyder does not have really any interest in Batman as a gothic detective. You can read his runs and maybe here and there, it fit in or it made it in the story, but the longer you stick with Scott Snyder, the more it becomes apparent he's really just bored with traditional Batman stories, traditional Batman costume, traditional Batman settings. At every turn, he just is desperate to get him out doing something else, doing something different, looking different, acting different. Every few pages, he's got this mad obsession with putting Batman in an Iron Man suit. He just loves it. Just falls all over himself, it seems to be. And in the comics, whenever you can put Batman in some sort of robotic suit, or just even monkey with the costume. He's going to be in the desert, and he's going to have a scarf or an extra strap on his suit or this and that, and that's taking away from that gothic aesthetic. He's supposed to be that, in the shadows, the bat on the gargoyles and stuff like that. That's the core. Now, what I'm saying is you can have stuff like that. You can have variations like that on a side run like that. All-Star Batman isn't a consistent run. It's not going to be around forever. It's not Detective Comics or Batman, and it's going to, by definition, be something a little different. It needs to be something a little different. So it's okay to stretch the limits a little bit. Metal takes it a bit too far. Now, I'm not totally shooting Metal, to pieces. I think Scott Snyder's a great writer. He knows how to write good story. And the Metal event, there's a lot to like about it. And really my big issue about it is just this. Batman is not the heart of the DC universe. And Metal is treating it like that. And I'm sure Warner Brothers and DC, they don't mind the character being treated like that either, because they think Batman's the big moneymaker. Then that might be, but Superman has always been the hero in the heart of the DC universe. As Superman goes, so goes the DC universe. That's always been the case. If he's being treated well, even if he's not selling as well as some other characters, if he's being treated, true to his character and to his form, then DC's going to flourish, and the other titles are going to do well as a result. So this happened in Rebirth, and even to the point where I think I mentioned in a previous video that Superman Reborn, this was a huge event. It deserved to be a huge crossover focal point of Rebirth, titles across the board. It was just in Action Comics and Superman comics though. And it was just this sort of little blip. And if you don't read that character, don't read those titles, you'll never even know it happened. And this is huge. This is the New 52 Superman is completely done away with in those books. And, he's reunited with the heart of his character, who's the Superman that we knew and loved, married Lois and had John and everything. They had this union of a fission in the whole timelines and continuities fixed together. And no longer did you have that angry little snotty, Kryptonian brat who was running around bullying people and, getting huffy and all self-angst ridden and stuff like that as the New 52 Superman was. That guy's gone. The only remnant is that our Superman wore the costume for a limited time, at one point in the history when you look at the new timeline. This is huge. This doesn't just affect Superman. This affects Wonder Woman, the whole Superman Wonder Woman romance. That's gone now. Never happened. Well, that's a big deal. It's a good thing, but it's still a big deal. It's really shaking the universe if you look at it. So this is the Superman who's always been Batman's best friend now. So all that drama between the New 52 Superman and Batman, and then, can I trust this new guy wearing the S or whatever? All that's gone. And it just keeps going out like that, on and on and on. That's a huge universe shattering event. And it was just treated as this little sort of, if you like Superman, that might be something you want to look at, but you don't have to. But Metal, Batman, Bruce Wayne, he's gone back to the dawn of the universe and been pegged by this dark god and all of these things, and he's gonna be the gateway for all of this new change and everything, and it's just too much Batman. This was the problem with the New 52. They tried to remake the DC universe into the image of Batman, the entire universe into the image of Batman. And that's not a service to the DC universe or to Batman himself, because Batman's so great because he's unique and he's the one who, he can bring that to the table. And, everybody else can bring their own unique things to the table. So just too much Batman, too much of a focus, too much Batman. And we see that, film fans know that as well. Man of Steel didn't make as much money as they wanted to, so bring Batman into the sequel. That'll do it, sure. And, let's have Batman be the one that puts the Justice League together. And now there's, look at their slate of movies. First of all, you can never pay any attention to any movie they announce because they've announced 1,000 things they never decided to do in the end. But you look at all their announced movies and the overwhelming majority are all set in the Batman universe. There's going to be a Nightwing movie and a Batgirl movie, and there's going to be a Joker origin story, and now another Joker Harley story, and another Batman story, and on and on and on. And it's just ridiculous. So they have a Batman problem in that they've allowed so many versions, quote unquote, of the character that the average person knows really little to nothing about who the character truly is at his core archetype, and who in terms of how he's stuck around in our culture so much and what he's meant to our culture. Many of them think of him as a Punisher type, or a secret military agent, a spy type, an espionage, a Jason Bourne type character, and that's not who Batman is. He's the gothic detective. He's restoring boundaries. He's setting up, he's fighting for justice in the dark, shedding light into the dark. That's the detective archetype. He makes sense of chaos and when our society doesn't know who to turn to. We don't trust the law. We don't trust, chaos either, so where do we turn to? Where do we go? The detective comes in time and again. You look at that through history. Whenever detective stories have fallen into favor and become more popular, it's because there's usually some sort of societal upheaval and people are unsure about the status quo and stuff. And that's why they turn to stories with a detective, because a detective represents a return to order. And Batman's always been that. Now that he's not being portrayed like that anymore, or at least, not that is his core archetype, it's going to end up eliminating or deadening the appeal of the character soon enough. And I'm just speaking from historical context and, trends that we've seen and just from cultural studies context there. The core archetype is strayed from, the core appeal is next to fade. So that's the Batman problem. They don't feel it now because he's still making big bucks for them and everything has to be Batman. And it doesn't matter who the character is at all, as long as he can have some ears and a little bat thing on his chest, that's good. They're good to roll. So that's the Batman problem I see. It's not completely hopeless. Like I said, there's great stuff out there still. I highly recommend the Rebirth Detective comics. It's so good. It's really quite good. And even if you like a little bit of the change and stuff, like I said, the All-Star Batman, if you're looking for a little bit of a shade different that's still within the universe and still not too far from that core archetype of Batman, that's fine. And not that Metal is going to be the undoing of Batman, but it's annoying especially to fans of other characters, but also to fans of Batman. Batman's just a shade under Superman in my favorite, superhero, personal pantheon there. And I like him as who he's supposed to be and who he was created to be. And I like stories that treat him as that. That's great. And it's frustrating and disillusioning when you can, when that's rare to find stories where he's really shining through in that true archetypal form. So that's my take on Batman. I'm sure plenty out there, don't want to hear any of that. They like their Ben Affleck, they like their Chris Nolan, they like their Scott Snyder, whatever, and they don't want to hear anything that would dare detract from it. Again, how much one likes these different versions, or how, even despite how well done some of the versions are. Like I said, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, that's a fantastic film. It does, that's all beside the point, of the character's treatment and the character's core appeal and stuff like that and what he's been historically. So anyway, rant's over. That's all. I will get this out soon. I will have that movie tag video out soon. That was a lot of fun. I'll tag some other people. That'll be so good fun. But then after that, I am going to return to some scripted videos, one or two at least before October, hopefully. And then in October, I am going to be doing I'm going to experiment with something new. I'll announce it later. Still got to work out some of the kinks, but hopefully there'll be almost a daily video coming from me in October for that month. So more details to follow then. But yeah, so until next time, do please click like, subscribe if you haven't already. If I haven't completely alienated you, then you can do so there. Until next time, keep reading and enjoying the superhero stories you love. Thanks for watching.